commissioner, see if you can get anything.
Farmingdale this weekend. Yeah.
Kill all the leeches.
You got canceled this week, last weekend.
Oh, really? You didn't have, oh, we had a place to catch.
Winter sport of
A friend of ours,
college.
yeah, I know, her pond. And Oswego's horrible.
Just
Was
dang
it at
Yeah,
Oswego?
that Oswego. They moved it from
Yeah.
Saturday to Sunday and then canceled it completely or postponed it without giving a new date.
Yeah, just no windbreak up there.
Yeah, they're like 4 weeks in already. You sit in the snow 90% of the season.
Yeah.
Was in the Atlanta airport yesterday, and so
Kentucky track and field day.
and I thought, I hope they're not flying.
Yeah.
She's like,
I was tracked on an area. Yesterday evening, my kids.
It's well built.
Hammer throw kids.
Oh, yeah.
Just like hammers.
Well, I'm sure they've already had meets. Because I mean, you should remember the college season.
The track is big.
Except for college, cross that goes all the way to Memorial Day weekend. The E1 finals.
Yep, yep.
I think it was like 21 or 23.
Yeah.
So old.
This new one's weird, the camera sticks out. Sit down flat, it's always falling off of angled surfaces on me.
You do all kinds of fun stuff now.
You got to teach me.
I was
I can
sitting
answer
on
work
the plane.
emails
Mine
and
is senior high
send
school.
messages through Teams, that's what I do.
I was sitting on the plane in Charlotte waiting to take off to come home
Have you ever
Friday
thought
night.
about the implants?
And I usually do my inventory, you know, and I did my inventory and I didn't have my phone. So I had to get off the plane, go swim upstream against everybody up the
Yeah.
plane and go get it. And I had Jen call it. And a nice lady that was sitting there answered it. She was holding on to it.
Lucky, I guess.
I know, I don't
think you
know.
checked. 10 minutes later, you'd have been gone.
You know,
Open this plane door. Homeland Security's on the other
Surprised
side.
they didn't come back up.
yeah, yeah.
They usually, once you're on the plane, they don't let you.
Well, I kind of didn't ask, you know, to get off the plane, but then when I got to
They
the
really
gate,
like that.
well, when I got to the gate, the lady said, "Give your boarding pass."
I thought I read a story about a plane being turned around.
We have an incident on the jetway.
Yeah, we got here a day late because of plane issues, but
Saw something yesterday, I have not seen it in years.
yeah, it was
Closed
awesome.
the door.
And we went with a couple to celebrate.
That is awesome, yeah.
So it was just the.
That's not-
Really expensive.
Don't see that.
Yeah.
But they
Once
were-
that thing's locked, it's done, yeah.
Did just enough of
Must have
that.
been the CEO of the airline or something.
Yeah.
Somebody.
Or a pilot that they had to get to another
It was
city.
crazy.
Yeah.
Never, I hadn't seen that in years.
Yeah.
Somebody was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's his time. If we could please call our meeting to order. If I could have a motion to move to executive session for the purposes of discussing the employment history of those persons.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's all right.
Start.
Evening, if we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, if I could please have a motion to approve our meeting minutes, regular meeting, our special Valentine's Day.
Celebration.
So moved.
Questions or comments regarding those minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have no updates to this evening's agenda, and I have no communications to share at this time. Superintendent?
Yes, I've got 3 things I'd like to share with you. The first, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go over to the intermediate school, but over the vacation, we got started on our first part of our capital project work. We had the intermediate school gym floor refinished, repainted with new lines and resurfaced. We haven't been able to get on it yet because the finish is still curing, but that'll happen later this week. That same work will get done at the junior high gym over the April break. So we're trying to pick things off as we're able to, so that we can continue to hit that deadline of the completion of the capital project in the fall of 2024. So we've mirrored the lining that we have in our high school gym, but now it makes it obvious that we need to paint the intermediate school gym. So we're going to talk about a game plan to do that, but it looks very nice and certainly overdue. The second thing, I had one of you, Keith actually, had reached out by email about a week ago and asked about the Graduates of Distinction. That was a recognition that was put in place a couple of years before Nancy Ruscio left. And it was a panel that looked at applications that were submitted to try to honor alumni who've gone on to do great things, which we have many of. We had stopped doing that, and Keith had asked if we would consider or had considered bringing it back in some way, shape, or form. So I had talked to Sonia and Luke when we had or Sonia and Aaron, and we had a planning meeting. And what I'm suggesting is that we kick it to our community engagement committee, which is one of our strategic plan committees. That group, part of their charge is to look at alumni and how we can do a better job connecting with and communicating with alumni. So my suggestion would be that we do that and then come back to you later this school year to let you know some of our recommendations.
I think the feedback that you're receiving from the board is that we are interested in pursuing that, the
Yep.
how and what it looks like, way, shape, and form is what we'd like
Yep.
a presentation on what makes the most sense.
Yeah, would be happy to.
So I've never heard of this. So is this basically like your athletics Hall of Fame, only in the academia?
Exactly, and the recognition took place at graduation.
Okay.
And so we'll come forward with a recommendation about how to go about doing that, and then gather some feedback from you folks and come up with a final plan.
So not necessarily academic, but it's, typically we're recognizing people that have made great contributions to the community, their communities.
Okay.
So we'll plan a presentation for later this spring. Okay?
So they have to be alum of?
Yeah, they
Is that-
graduates
okay.
of our district, yeah. And then the last thing, but not the least, Janelle Hess, as you know, a student member on the board, and part of her charge that she and I have been talking about is to try to put together a repeatable process for gathering feedback from students in various buildings in the district. And so I asked Janelle just tonight to share the progress that she's made so far, leading up to what will be a formal presentation, we're calling it, the last meeting in March. So Janelle.
Yeah, so over the last few weeks, I've been working with Mrs. Falls and Mrs. Schneider in the intermediate and the junior high. I've had an incredible opportunity to work with a group of students over there. They were asked a series of questions, and 2 questions that I'm going to focus on tonight and briefly describe to you is about school culture and their mental health. One of the first questions they were asked, do you think your school has positive school culture? If yes, what do you think helps make it that way? And 2, do you feel like you have a teacher and an adult you can go to during the day? In the junior high, everyone had a pretty similar answer. They felt like they were in a good environment, they were safe, they had a teacher to go to, and overall they had a good environment. They also all agreed that there was an adult they could go to, whether that was a counselor or a teacher, or maybe a parent if they had someone over there. The intermediate students weren't asked the same exact questions, but they were very similar. They were asked what things they liked about school and what helped them stay engaged during the school day. Their answers were actually surprising. I got more solid feedback than I thought. Some said they liked a specific subject like math or writing or history. The most common response they got was that they liked learning new things every day. They answered that they liked to do math because they liked the new challenges, so we can conclude from that is that our teachers are doing a good job keeping that balance of keeping them engaged. When talking about engagement with these students, a common response that was given was that they like independent work, but they also like it when the teachers switched up and get those hands-on activities and are more one-on-one with them, and not doing the same thing every day. I think overall the process went really well. It was a great experience to be able to work with Mrs. Schneider and Mrs. Falls and all the students as well. I think next time, although it worked great, fewer questions would be better, just because of the time there would be also more of an opportunity to focus on specific questions. And within the next week or so, as Mr. Trick said, a survey will be sent out to the high school students and we'll start collecting feedback from them as well. So I'm eager to get those responses and share the data with you.
Janelle, in your process in working with students, did you identify yourself as a board member and somebody they could reach out to?
Yes.
Okay. And how are students advised how to contact you or how to be able to access you?
As of right now, just by email,
Okay.
but Mrs. Falls and Mrs. Schneider too.
Okay. Thank you for doing that.
You interviewed all the students in those schools?
No, so there was a certain group of students that was selected. Mrs. Schneider and Mrs. Falls pulled out students from each grade. So for the intermediate, we did a boy and a girl from each grade. And then for Mrs. Schneider decided that we were going to pull students from the student council group and use them. And we just kind of did a trial and error to see how that went off first, but it went really well. So I think we'll continue with that process and hopefully pull more students in the future.
Yeah, and Janelle and I have been meeting once a week or so, and one of the things that we talked about yesterday when we talked about her experience so far was how do we widen that net, and, and to get her over in the buildings at different times of the day would be helpful too, because right now we limited ourselves to the end of the day, which sometimes makes it a challenge for other students to be involved. So that'll be an ongoing issue, to try to widen the scope of the types of children, numbers of children that we talk to, and really get it to a point where the children are self-selecting, right? And so you start and then you learn from what you need to improve.
Janelle, do you actually have a high school lunch period? Do you have lunch?
Yes.
Okay.
I know, I know, but yes, you know.
Because that may be an opportunity too.
Yeah.
Maybe you could have lunch in one of the other cafeterias.
Trying to get
As I make your schedule for you, yeah.
Other questions for Janelle? Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. That's all.
I believe we're on to board presentations, and this evening's presentation is a budget presentation.
We are, and Mike's going to be sharing some more specific information with you about state aid and the governor's proposal. Last time, if you remember, we gave you the 60,000 foot view, and he's going to break it down into the smaller subsections now. So we look forward to that.
So the state aid proposal came in from the governor, and we had an opportunity to meet with budget and finance and kind of review where we were at. What I'm going to do tonight is just use this slide and go through the different line items just to explain a little bit about each aid area, why there may be additions or deficits. For the rest of the presentation, you may have seen in the packet, there's probably 7 or 8 more slides. Those really take a real deep dive into the definitions, maybe more so than what I covered today in a generic part. But again, it's there for information, and people have information after looking at those. Or again, need a cure for insomnia. By about slide 4 or 5, that may do it for some people. So jumping off, we had talked about foundation aid, again, aid per student in the district. We had talked about the full phase-in amount. We had originally forecasted just under $600,000 increase. As you can see, with the aid formula fully being run, we are looking at right now on the governor's proposal a $2.3 million increase. So they fully run the formulas. They fully run the formulas for districts that fell in the middle. And what I mean by that is that when you look at your combined wealth ratio in a scale of 1 to 10, Homer fell right in the middle at a 5. So for a certain period of time, folks in 1 through 4 were being funded at a higher rate. At another time, groups say 7 through 10 were being funded at a higher rate. And then you're looking at the middle, the 5 and the 6. And really they've brought everything together now where they're fully funding that for our students. Again, a piece of that revolves around the free and reduced lunch number, which we had talked about last time, and actually talked about enrollment, which is starting to flatten as well. Our summer transportation aid, this is an aid that we receive from the state for our summer transport of our special needs students. So we do offer our summer reading program, our summer enrichment. Actually, when they figure out transportation aid, those numbers are figured at a low percentage. This is a totally separate item just for our special needs students. And as you can see, with a lot of our transport, we are doing more programs in-house with our extended day program, so our transportation needs aren't as great as they've been in the past where we've had to transport students out of district. Our transportation aid without that summer transportation, you're going to see an increase there. The increase is partially due to an increase in salaries and also an increase in transportation as far as our leasing going. So the price of our leases are going up a little bit, and that's reflected in the transportation aid. So we do receive transportation aid per pupil per mile. But it's important, there is what's called a pupil decimal amount. And what that is for students who we transport that aren't bus riders. They would be considered within a certain frame as walkers. But we do transport. If we go by a house that's close to the district, we do transport. But we have to go through every 3 years. We fill out a series of spreadsheets, which I love to do. And with that, they then produce a decimal multiplier that goes into a formula to calculate our aid. So we receive aid on salaries, we receive aid for transportation, on our fuel, any of our costs in the garage. So with that, our transportation aid is increasing about $371,000. In the past few years, it's really fluctuated because what the state was doing is they were counting our leases twice. So we're now back to a level where we don't have to forecast that maybe they projected too much aid for us. So with this, we should be right on track now with our transportation aid. As I jump through these columns, if folks have questions, please feel free to ask. I know this stuff like the back of my hand, so sometimes I don't want to breeze over something that folks may have a question on. So our building aid, the building aid that we have now is, again, like a mortgage. The state provides a certain amount of building aid. 83% of our purchases or our mortgages are aidable. So when you take a look at this, you're going to see that building aid increase for next year at $159,000. That's the aid for our EPC, or our energy performance project that we just did. So if you remember, the two pieces of the EPC were that they were going to go ahead and give us state aid on the project, that $4.2 million project, but also, as part of the project, the company that we went with has to guarantee that savings of around $400,000 a year by putting in the lights and some of the other boiler work and such that's been done in the district. So again, we are receiving aid on that, and also with the guarantee that we'll have savings in our utilities. Now, if we don't have that savings in the utilities that's been promised in the contract, the company that did the work here in the district has to make up the difference between the savings in the utilities and what was promised as part of the contract. So they did prior go through all the different utility bills and our usage and things of that nature to calculate a number that we agreed upon in the contract. Our building reorganizational aid, what you're seeing is that it's starting to drop off a little bit. The reorganizational aid was done several years ago when Homer and Truxton merged into one district. We did have projects that were out there and then projects that were done mutually beneficial to both areas. We're starting to see then that amount of time after the last project that we had that was counted under the reorganizational aid is starting to come off the books. So you'll start to see that number start to decrease over the next few years. The positive on that is our building aid will increase after we conclude the current project that we're in. Our BOCES aid, as you can see, with our BOCES aid, we receive aid on the services that we procure through BOCES. Just to give an idea, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, for a salary, so if we are paying a salary of a BOCES individual as part of a contract, you're only going to receive aid on roughly the first $30,000 of that expenditure. But we have several other expenditures that are fully aidable through our purchasing. So we still continue to see a sizable amount of aid coming with our cooperative purchases. And again, the estimate that it's going to go up about $292,000 going into next year. Also, a big piece of our BOCES budget, we'll address that with Budget and Finance and in April with the full board, is that the majority of our major tech projects also go through BOCES. So as we go through that, that's a big piece of, a big chunk of the aid coming back.
Michael, does our aid go up because our expenditures are going up?
Our expenditures have gone up, but not what we are purchasing. We're purchasing more aidable parts of the budget.
So some of it's coming out of general operating and going there, and now it's aidable.
Yes.
Out of general operating, it wasn't aidable.
Yes, and what we did, if you remember back probably 4 years ago, Chris Moore, correct me if I'm wrong, when we decided to bring a lot of our special ed programs back in-house. So that kind of flip-flopped a little bit. But we have things now that we're using our OC-Ed, occupational education programs. We have well over 100 students attending those programs. You have your new tech programs, so there are a lot of other programs that are being offered, new visions programs that we bought into as well. So that's where you're seeing that increase back from in-house to BOCES. Any other questions there with BOCES? So our next is our public excess high cost aid. This is aid that we receive for students in the district who are attending out-of-district placements, but they are considered public institutions. So you can see there's not a huge change in that number, only an increase of $464. If you look at our private excess cost aid, these are students that are attending facilities that are outside of the district, but they are not public facilities. So this is the aid that we receive back on this. Our software aid, so the next few aidable areas that we get into, our software aid, our library materials aid, our textbook aid, hardware and technology aid. When you look at that, those are all pieces of the puzzle for different departments. So our textbook monies that we have, roughly we have an allotment right around $120,000. We can use make computer purchases through that as well and get a portion of that back every year. Again, hardware and technology purchases through Mr. Finn's department. Our library materials aid, as you can see from the COVID year and then what's forecasted through next year, again, a lot of those pieces of the puzzle of what's aidable in those specific categories. So that's one area that we can look to continue to max out every year. Our next piece is universal pre-K aid. This is a big chunk, a big increase. So when you take a look at this, and we had talked in the last meeting about pre-K, is that the state of New York is looking to fully fund pre-K in every school district. So with having all of our classrooms fully funded, you're looking at a $487,475 increase. So again, this is a big piece of the aid puzzle. When this is figured in, and when we go through the budget process, this will be figured in general fund, but that becomes a breakout. So we account for everything in general fund with this because the aid comes through in general fund, but then in our accounting, you may see is when we go through audits and such, it's then broken out into a subcategory.
Is that category going to be dependent on the governor's budget passing, or that's?
So this number would be contingent on the governor's budget passing, but could increase with the legislative budget. So one of the things, again, in looking at this, it's a good point to talk about it, as history goes, the governor's proposal is usually the lowest of the two proposals. When you get to the legislative proposal, usually this proposal will increase. Now, from what we're hearing, it may not increase by much because a lot of the items that the legislators wanted in the budget, the governor had already included those. But this may go up. So, in looking at it, you can see, again, we had forecasted just under $600,000. It's a good problem to have. We're looking at an estimate right now of $3.6 million increase in state aid. Now, as we move through, we're going to talk more and more about what that would offset. Again, we had talked last time about the federal monies that we have and federal programming. We had talked about, again, with this increase in pre-K, some of that aid, we won't be reliant on federal aid, so we can steer that federal aid in another direction over the next 2 years. So again, you know, it's good news on this front. We are in far better shape than many other local districts as far as state aid, but this is really something we've been waiting for. There have been years where we've had a $100,000 increase in state aid or foundation aid. You know, it was flat for a number of years. Gap elimination, they didn't give us the aid. So they restored essentially what they weren't giving us. They didn't give us an amount on top of it. So we are in a good position right now. Again, with coming off of the federal, the reliance on some federal aid and some programs, that's going to be the talk in preparing the budget. We'll also look at other revenues as part of the budget in the next few presentations. But again, some reliance that we've had on reserves. Right now, we may be able to whittle that back, and some reliance on fund balance as well. So again, in a good position. You know, this always comes in as the high-end number. I think that I'd be remiss if I did not let folks know that the $3.6 million increase, if that came in at $3.6 million, I'd instruct everyone to go play the lotto, because there are a lot of fluctuations. Again, this is estimated aids. These are things that you're estimating. For example, for BOCES, if something happened and we didn't spend the full amount this year that we had planned to, then that aid number would come down for next year. So there are some different pieces of the puzzle that we put in forecast amounts. But really last year, and going through in our budget and tightening up and where we were at, I think we're in a good position to feel that these aids are going to run fairly true for the most part. So, as I said, to go through in your packets, I've covered it maybe a little more verbosely than I needed to, but it's just a breakdown of what all the different aids are.
Well done.
People have additional questions.
Yeah. Any other questions for Michael?
I did.
Great.
What was it that you said about fully UPK open to all schools? What was that you just said about?
So the state, right now, the governor's proposal is that pre-K would be fully funded in every school district.
So does that mean that we have to have spots for every child that's eligible for pre-K? Because
So
currently we have a waiting list, so now do we have to be prepared to create more classrooms?
Yeah, the easy answer to that is yes.
Okay.
One of the things though that it fluctuates right around the 90 number that we're at right now. Since we've gone to the 5 sections, we have had waiting lists, but in each case, throughout the course of the year, all of the children that have been on those lists have been able to get in. But we may, depending upon, we have people applying now, we may have to come to you and say, you know, this might be the time to add a 6th section, which again, would be a good problem to have. But that's the goal of the, as Mike said, that's the goal in the state right now, is to fully fund pre-K.
And just some history on that, there were a number of years where we tried to get into the funding stream for pre-K, and the state shut it down. So this is a big change in the state moving to funding pre-K for 4-year-olds.
Yeah, we've tried to build that program for years, one classroom at a time,
Yeah.
even without having the funding available,
Well,
so.
and we're
it's
able
kind of a
to
nice
do-
change to see that
Yeah.
it might come back in our favor
Yeah.
this time around.
Well, and the district over the years has done a wonderful job in trying to do that and fund it locally when other districts haven't been able to. So we were ahead of the game, not because it didn't hurt a little bit, but because it was a priority.
Any other questions?
You had said it, it's not a solid number, that it could change up or down. What's the likelihood of it increasing, and do you know, do we have an idea in what sections that you could say?
I mean, generally, the increase would come in the foundation aid, where I wouldn't really forecast an additional amount there, but you never know. To try to guess what the state would do. I mean, when you get down like software aid into hardware and technology, those are fairly locked in numbers. BOCES aid may fluctuate a little just based on our end spending, so.
Okay.
But, you know, the other aids, building aid and building reorganizational, those are pretty solid as well. Any other questions?
So we might be on track for an on-time budget from the state, where our timeline is.
I will never prognosticate on what they're going to do. I would like to hope so.
We have to pass a budget, hope that the number's right. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Moving on to new business. If I could have a motion to accept the reports from the Committee on Preschool Special Education.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments from Mr. Moore? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? If I could please have a motion to accept the reports from the Committee on Special Education.
So moved. Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you, Mr. Moore. If I could please have a motion to approve the donation.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? If I could please have a motion to approve the tax levy percentage.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
And just to be clear, we're approving that that is our number, not whether we're over or under the number, or not what our number is, just that's the number that has been calculated.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? A motion to approve the national trip.
So moved.
Questions or comments? All
This
those-
isn't, sorry, this isn't in stone, right? This is.
Correct. This was to
Amendable.
allow them to do some prior planning in
Okay.
case we have students at the state competition qualify for the national.
Okay.
Yeah.
When is the state?
What's that?
When is the state?
March 9th through the 11th. Yeah.
Is that a local thing? Like,
Rochester.
It's in Rochester, yeah. We're hopeful that we have students involved.
That's awesome.
Additional questions or comments?
It's been incredible.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We're approving the senior trip.
That would be what we're asking you to do.
If I could please have a motion to approve the 2023 senior trip.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Looks like a fun trip. Kids go.
Yeah. Kind of sort of close by.
Fair hit.
But still, like,
My senior's interested, so
Good.
I can speak to you.
Additional questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? A motion to approve personnel?
Second.
Questions or comments regarding personnel? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Informational items, Superintendent?
Yes, I've got 3 for you tonight. One is the fundraising update from the junior high school. Science Club will be doing their annual bottle drive. Mr. Bennett has provided an end-of-year schedule for the high school, end-of-year activities. And the French group are recommending that we form an honor society to help promote the study of French in our district and help recognize high achievement in French. And that's a process by which we would first identify it. It would be done for a year, monitored to check that they're meeting regularly and have good participation, with the expectation that in a year, if all of that happens, that we would formally recognize this as a group and with a paid advisor and that kind of.
And they'll track the level of participation.
Yes. Yeah, we have minutes from the meetings and those things.
How many of our students currently take French versus Spanish? Like, it's not a 50-50, is it?
It's not 50-50. I don't have those numbers down. But it is considerably lower. And it's fluctuated from year to year, but it's been consistently lower. But I can get you those numbers.
You don't need to do it.
Okay.
I was
Quick-
just,
quick
have they
question.
ever like traveled to Quebec or Toronto, and like, have they done travel? like
Not
that?
recently. In the past, we have done that, which whenever you travel, it's a high interest thing. 9 times out of 10, that's determined obviously by the teacher. And we had teachers in the past that have taken children to those areas.
Quick question, the end of year activities, junior, senior prom, my understanding is the cost is $70 a ticket?
So ticket prices haven't been established yet.
Okay.
Fall planning began without fundraising to put against that. The estimate was between $60 and $70. A couple different things have gone on over the course of that time. One, some individual fundraising efforts have become available for students. So you might have bought a chocolate dip pretzel. Juniors, they're delicious. Mrs. Reed loves them. She will buy maybe 1 or 2 a day because we have a young lady, a junior, who is working through selling those. Students can sell up to, each box they sell is a $10 credit, if you will, to the cost of their ticket or their day's ticket. Obviously, you can't sell beyond the cost of that for yourself, but you can certainly do that for others. So there's some of that. Class has done some fundraising in that regard as well, and we'll continue to look at that. Mrs. Tracy, one of our class advisors, and I have been talking. This is a challenge. This is a group of kids who came into 9th grade with COVID, without a lot of things that 9th graders have come into this building for years. And it didn't surprise me as we've kind of started to restart traditions and events. That's something I haven't heard in a decade. I've heard, which is, I would really like to do a more traditional prom, not the let's go around and have snack stations. We want to sit down and have a meal together. So that's been a trade-off over the years because of the costs that's come with that. And of course, add to that with the cost we are today. Not surprising, we leave extra classroom activities with facilitation, with advice, but for kids to direct. So, kids come to them, we try to support them, we try to encourage and find ways to make sure it's not cost prohibitive. And actually talking to Megan today, she identified to me one of the things that, because our student leaders work together. Our student government has approached the juniors with, hey, how can we help with this? Student government, annually, even through the pandemic, runs Casino Night, this hugely successful fundraiser. They've been able to do some other things that our classes haven't been able to do. Because that adds to this, right? Things that classes have done, fundraisers in the past just haven't gone on. So I expect actually next week, the high school student government will hear a proposal from the junior class on how student government can help reduce those costs. So it's interesting. And kids are working to solve problems, not unlike what the adults do, and sometimes more successfully than, or not this group, but if you look beyond, it's always interesting to see the way our kids tackle things and work together for each other. We, over the years, have made sure if a kid wants to go to something, they know, whether it's a senior trip, whether it's a prom, you name it. At some point, Mrs. Knight, Mrs. Tracy, the junior class officers will come together, we'll get an exact dollar number, and then we'll talk about what else we need to do, whether it's with the staff or otherwise, how does somebody, if a kid needs sponsorship, if there's a way for us to reduce the cost. We've spent money on decorations in the past, I'm not gonna do that because of that. We talked about the favors that we tend to not always give out, or they're gonna do something unique with that, so the tickets and the favor. So they're really looking at how do we not, that $60 to $70 number sounds big, in the fall, that was kind of worst case.
Yeah, I appreciate the work that's going into it. My concern is that student participation, that $60 to $70 sounds shocking, and for many of our families is shocking. Especially if you're thinking a couple wants to go, you're checking $140 just to get in. You haven't talked about all the other pieces that, as a dad of 3 daughters, understands goes into these kinds of events.
So don't disagree with you, having lived through the other side of that as a dad of a boy this fall at Cotillion, right? $25 in for just one, $50 a couple, and there's no food involved. That's, again, not trying to excuse it, it's a big number, without a doubt, and like I said, we're going to continue to work at how we can bring that number down.
I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure you get a voice.
Because I got to put the plug in, Tom will let me go another 35 seconds, but we have a parent, Mrs. Acker will give me 35 seconds to just plug the parents who have for 3+ decades gone and put an all-night party on, that any kid can go to, doesn't need a tuxedo, just needs to come happy, come excited to be with people, and come to have fun. So we're blessed with parents that are involved in that too. So I just had to say that since I appreciate that. So
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
So Doug, about those pretzels, are they still doing the pretzels? Because I haven't been able to get a pretzel in months.
We can work into
I
it.
know a senior, because we've expanded that to seniors so they can also defer the cost.
I keep being told, no, the pretzels are gone. There
I
are
know
no
a
more
senior I
pretzels
can
for you.
reach out to.
Just for you.
I can get you some.
So, can you pick the date for this prom?
So, in the past, pre-COVID, we were the first weekend in May, where sometimes it snowed. COVID pushed us into looking at outdoor proms. The students last year went away from what I just described so they could have an outdoor venue. The year before that, we were actually the weekend before graduation again because of how things got done. So the junior class identified that they wanted to continue the date that was established the year before.
So do they know that the SET is the next day when they pick the date? So it's kid. This is I don't have junior, but it was brought to my attention by somebody that like you should put more thought into the date, and I'm like I'm not really sure what you're talking about, but I'll look into it.
No, I appreciate the
But
question.
if children pick the date and they're aware that the SET, if they know all that information ahead of time, I feel better. But if they don't, I think we should maybe help guide them a little better.
So agree with this, acknowledge, yes. And unlike state exams, we're tied to 8A, there are multiple offerings. It's hard to find any good date.
And it's on a Friday, right?
It is.
Is that normal?
So,
Define normal.
Like,
how much time do I have
pre-COVID,
to,
I
over
guess?
my 35 seconds that I asked for?
That just seems odd to me, like, don't you go to school during the day? Like, how do these people get ready and then go do all the shebang? And then like all night long, and then SET the next day, like, it just seems like a lot for Friday.
So our number of kids taking the SAT, that's a whole other conversation. I don't want to get into.
Okay.
We've done some things at the end of the year to bring some training, some disruptions in the school day that were spread out over several different days. It had varying participation really into a day. And the problem is the piece of that. And the document that I present Mr. Turk with year-end stuff, I actually identifies a variety of things that will tend to be a part of June 2nd. That doesn't just include the junior senior prom, that doesn't just include the elementary party. That includes us doing the senior graduation walks, and what we did last year at the elementary school, when we dismiss our seniors essentially for the day and our juniors to get ready for the prom. Our underclassmen have planned, again, not staff, this is, this is stuff you get excited about as a high school person. Kids have planned a day for themselves of activities. A couple weeks before we get into finals and briefs exams, essentially say, it's the end of the year, let's take a second to take a breath before we go and push through it. So, it's different.
Okay.
It's not Homer the last 30 years. And we're tied to tradition sometimes, and there's stuff about COVID that has been rotten. But it's the silver lining, we've been able to look at some things and say, okay, where can we move some things around? How can we engage kids in doing some things that they have? The kid involved, the student involvement, and all the things I outlined, again, for me is a huge part of that. How do we have kids work on being leaders, making decisions, being more independent, at the same point with support.
Thank
You want
you.
to put June 2nd on your calendar and come out of us.
You need volunteers?
Thank you,
Yes.
Doug.
Thank you.
What is the prom date?
June 2nd, Friday.
And that's all I have for informational items.
Sorry.
No, we shared information, that's what we,
Yeah.
that's what we're here to do.
We're at the point of our meeting for community voices. I do not have any signed up. Are there any community voices wishing to be heard this evening?
So we have two district committee reports, PLC and ILC.
Yep, so on February 16th, the Professional Learning Committee met and to put some of the finishing touches on the agenda for our March 13th Staff Development Day. As you know, that's as many of you know, that's the group that helps plan and get the day rolled out for our Professional Learning Day on March 13th and also the one in October. So we put the finishing touches on that. And just summary, the day is full. We have a large number of folks who have stepped up to the plate. The exact number is 22 staff members in Homer have stepped up to facilitate a 1-hour learning session for their colleagues. That's a high number. So kudos to all those teachers who have stepped up and said, yes, I want to teach my colleagues something that I do in my classroom. So that's wonderful. We have bus driver training, professional learning in the morning. We plan retirement planning seminars, classroom management strategies, technology integration strategies, curriculum alignment time, fast bridge training, a series of medical and SEL related sessions as well, because that's always a big topic for us as educators. And then in the afternoon, the bulk of the work will be vertical curriculum articulation, which ties into our ILC meeting we had this afternoon prior to the board meeting. That was a time for us to get together as the grade level leaders and curriculum lead teachers who will be facilitating the vertical curriculum work in the afternoon. And I went through the protocol that we're going to use as a district to have these meetings and conversations to really look at the spectrum of grade levels in the content area and what it looks like at 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and identify gaps, and identify areas of strength, and what are we good at? We're come up with a plan for each area to address moving forward for our curriculum development improvement cycle. So it's a jam-packed day, but I'm proud of all the work and effort that went into planning the day, and I can't wait to get the day started.
Thank you, Jim.
And are you also doing the ILC?
He just did.
Oh yeah, sorry, tied in. Yeah.
We had a meeting right
Yeah.
before.
He was so smooth.
Dang.
It's because he had a pretzel. It's good, yeah, she needs pretzels. That's what's
We'll
going
make sure
on
you
here.
get I know.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Board member activities.
We're at break.
Upcoming events, superintendent?
Yes, our March is Music in Our Schools Month, and a number of opportunities to see our kids in action, the first of which starts this Friday night at 7 o'clock, weather permitting. Our high school musical, SpongeBob the Musical. Was able to see a snippet of what we're about to see on Friday night at the elementary the other day. They stopped in and did some quick scenes for the kids that the kids thoroughly enjoyed. So hope you're able to attend one of those 3 performances. Friday night, there's a matinee on Saturday afternoon, and then a 7 o'clock at night on Saturday. And if there is inability to have it Friday night for whatever reason, they have it scheduled for Sunday. So we'll get 3 performances in way, shape, or form. But a lot of great opportunities for our kids to perform. So hope you're able to get out and see as many of those as you can.
With copyright and stuff, we're not able to live stream the music.
That's correct.
I think we're at adjournment, right? If I could have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
No one wants to second that?
Casey
Casey got it.
Casey's right behind you.
And all those in favor?
Thanks, everyone.